Hi, I'm Edgar Hernandez.
And I'm Nuri Robles. And this is
Bar Talking
Bar, your access to the heartbeat of New York City's bar and hospitality scene.
Hosted straight from the city that never sleeps, we sit down with bartenders, brands and ambassadors, hospitality pros, and cocktail lovers.
Whether it's the art of bartending, the hustle behind hospitality, or the wildest bar tales, expect raw conversations and industry secrets.
Listen to the people who pour your favorite cocktails and keep the nightlife alive.
If you love bars, spirits, and the stories that bring them to life, follow us, share, and subscribe to keep the conversations flowing.
The podcast that you didn't know you need.
New episodes weekly.
Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast,
Bar Talking Bar.
Today, we want to acknowledge everyone who has been listening to our show week by week. Thank you for supporting, thank you for sharing, and thank you for commenting. We want to acknowledge everybody. I want to say the names of you guys next time we are actually online. And but without further ado, Dory, why don't you help me introduce our guest of the day?
Of course. We're very excited. Obviously, I'm a very fan of you, so I'm like a groupie.
She's like a groupie.
Everywhere we go.
But whoever is not watching it and you're listening in every platform, we have two legends, two OGs, OGs. We have Tomr
Richter here. Aplausos.
And
And
Sother Teague.
applause for everyone.
to be here, guys.
No, thank you so much for coming. Honestly, it is an honor for us, for you taking time of your day, being here with us and talk to the audience about yourself, your story, your history, what you have been doing throughout the years. We've known you because we've seen you in the industry for a while, and like us, I know that there are a lot of people looking up to you in so many ways, respectfully. Mm-hmm. But yeah, without further ado, do you want to start by asking them a question?
Of course, but the reason we're inviting you two guys is because definitely we know that you're friends.
Yeah,
you're part of this industry and peers, and obviously you have a lot of information that many new bartenders they don't have, and obviously this industry has been for me one of the best industries that I've been working in, and New York City is one of the best places to be part of it, and you're part of it. And what is the most besides being honor and everything, I think it's educational, it's inspirational, and also it has a purpose that some people after the pandemic lose a little bit of the touch of what is New York City hospitality, especially bartending. But before that, we're gonna know a little bit about you guys, where you're coming from, how.
Well, I think, there's probably, I'm glad you're having us both on together. We are pals, but there's probably, too much show for just one of us, right? I don't think we have enough to say separately. But together, we'll hopefully round out the show. You think
I can challenge that, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far back in my CV you want to go. My dad owned a bar when I was a kid. I grew up on the beach in Florida. I would hustle, beers from the cooler out to the bar for quarters that I would then turn around and put in the, the video games that he had at the bar. So you got the money right back. Great business model. I left my hometown in Florida at age 17. I've lived in 12 states before arriving here in New York. And all of them, I was a cook and a chef, and I taught at a culinary school. I worked on the show Good Eats with Alton Brown as the research and technical chef there. But when I got to New York, I had never been here. I rented an apartment over the phone. And when I got to so I didn't even know if my apartment was in the right neighborhood. Luckily, I negotiated a 6-month lease with this woman. She was very nice. And I grabbed a Zagat guide.
Ooh,
and the MTA map. And I thought, well, I'm just going to look through this guide and see places that have a high enough, average price point and maybe that are busy. I'm going to apply as a waiter while I figure out if I'm living in the right apartment, while I look for a job as a chef, while I get my ground. I'll work for 6 months with flexible income, flexible time, and that will be my establishment here in New York. So I put dots on the map of all these restaurants, and I thought, well, I'll go tomorrow to the furthest one away, and I will apply my way back home. Either way, I got to come back home, right? The very first one that I walked into on 77th and 3rd, the Atlantic Grill, doesn't exist anymore.
love that
The maitre
place.
d' there was a guy named Alex Cochon. Alex had worked at Herb Saint in New Orleans when I was the sous chef for Susan Spicer at Bayona. So he recognized my name, and he said, I told him that.
I didn't know you were sous chef at Bayona. That's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
So I told him, and at Cobalt, right, which was Susan's signature restaurant, which is now Luke. But so he recognized my name, and he said, he literally leaned over the podium and he said, "I don't think you don't want to cook here, do you?" And I was like, no. It's not. It's like, listen, this was a great place. They had quality food, but they weren't doing anything pushing boundaries. They were like, "What do you think if we put peanut butter with jelly?" I don't know, man. What if we put milk on the side? Sold. I think their most known dish was a wasabi crusted nori wrapped tuna. It was, and there was no surprises. Everything goes together.
My brother worked at Atlantic Grill for like 6 years, but it was back in 2000s, I think so.
Yeah.
But I was always impressed of I don't know how it was before that, but Danny Mayer always was like.
Well, Neil Bodenheimer worked there too. That's where I met Neil.
Oh, okay.
Who now owns, of course, The Cure, and he's one of the foundation members at the Tales of the Cocktail. But so he leads over and he goes, "You don't want to work in the kitchen here, dude?" And I was like, "No, I want to be a waiter for 6 months where I can do what I said." I said, I won't screw you over. 6 months is a fair term for a waiter. I'll be better than your average waiter on day one. I'll do this thing. And he said, "Can you bartend?" I said, "Alex, I've spent my entire career making beautiful food and putting it on a plate. I think I can make a beautiful drink and put it in a glass." And he said, "Wear all black, show up tomorrow." I told him I'd do it for 6 months. I was behind that bar for 3 years.
Wow.
And that changed the course of my life.
And you never.
Alex, if you're out there, you changed my life.
Thank you, Alex.
Wow, and that's one of the things that we always say. We always have to be thankful of people who gave us the opportunity without even thinking about it.
Sure.
You look at at it now, and you're like, wow, this person gave me this chance, or gave me actually the job, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a turning point for us. And what about you, Tom?
Yeah.
Break out your stone tablet and you read your diary.
Well, it's a little more convoluted. At least Sother, you're much more focused in this side. And when were you at Bayona? What year?
I left New Orleans in 90, I want to say 7.
Okay, because I ate there in 2000. I just was hoping that you'd have been there.
That's when I looked.
You just missed it for
I grew up on a small farm, a hobby farm in Minnesota. My father was a chiropractor, and hobby farms are only 25 acres because you just have horses and sheep and stuff like that. You don't live on it. Went to college at the University of Minnesota. I got accepted at MIT, but I wanted to go to the U of M because I wanted to be in the marching band. And
what instrument do you play?
I'm a sax player.
In the marching band?
Yeah, so
Incredible.
my first year and a half I was in the saxophone line, but I was a serious musician at that time, so I didn't want to ruin my embouchure, so I got into the drum line and I played cymbals.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the best, most important experience of my life, was being in the marching band.
Wow.
I was in a band too when I was younger.
It was just, I'm probably going to tear up when I'm talking about it, but it's it was, when you're marching around on the field, you're a little dot that it's so important you're in the right place because you're one part of one big hunk of stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you're out of place, it doesn't look right. And we were doing crazy musical adaptations of various songs. We had this amazing band director. His name is O'Neill Sanford, and he did a lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Amazing.
So to this day, when in the Stone plays, I know my cymbal part, and I always cry. Anyway, so I was at the University of Minnesota, and my saxophone rank lieutenant was in the theater department, and he urged me to audition for a show. And I did, and that was the winter musical of No No Nanette, and I got into the ensemble, and from that point forward, I was always in a show. Oh. And I kept changing my degree from aerospace engineering to pre-med to music, then to theater. And so that's what I did. Then I started moving around the country. I supported myself as an actor for the first half of my life, and I started living all over the place. And I would always work in restaurants or bars to supplement. I found myself in California at the Zuni Cafe
Oh yeah.
Oh.
in 1987, 87 to the beginning of 89.
87, the year I graduated high school.
I was entered into elementary school.
Okay. And we were making the Zuni margarita is still, whenever I put a margarita on menu, it is the one, because we would just cut a big bowl of limes and have them right there for us. We would squeeze half a lime into the drink, 1 ounce of Cointreau, 2 ounces of Blanco tequila, and that was it. Half salted the rim. You never asked somebody if they wanted salt or not.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, that is my go-to margarita.
Foundational.
Yep.
In your career and in your tastes.
Absolutely, because, listen, I appreciate the ones that have added sweetener to them. Your initial experience is like, oh my God, that's really great. If it's a little drier, it's like, oh, that's really good. I want another one. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I want another one. That sweeter margaritas are delicious, but the repeat order is lower because the sugar starts making you feel. Anyway, so then I moved. I lived in Aspen for a minute, and I moved to Chicago and did theater and worked in nightclubs, and got in. It's like I always say to young bar folk, work in a shitty bar before you do this snotty stuff that we do, because it really. If you do this first, it's hard to go backwards. And as long as you keep progressing, and luckily I kept doing that because I was in theater, so I was always working bars and restaurants on the side. And worked in nightclubs and shit in Chicago, moved to New York, got into the national tour of Greece, Broadway tour. Did that for a year.
Who'd you play, Rizzo?
I was Sonny. I was Sonny, and Deborah Gibson is still a good friend. Deb, whenever I hear your songs on the radio, I tear up. I love hearing your voice. Just saying. I worked with Lucy Lawless, Xena Warrior Princess.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mackenzie Phillips. I mean, Sally Struthers is one of the sweetest people on the planet. She stays with us when she's in town.
Amazing.
My wife is also still a working actor and has worked with Sally a number of times, so it's been great. Got to New York, was in and out of theater. Then I was, let's see, what happened? I was working at a restaurant in New Jersey, David Drake's, one of the best restaurants I've ever worked at in my life. And he was opening another place in New Brunswick, and there is where I developed a tonic syrup that people kept saying, you should bottle this stuff. It's great. I'm like, yeah, it's too much work. And a year later, I incorporated and started making and bottling Tomr's tonic. And Freeman's was my first. Lynette Marrero is a dear friend of mine. She's like a sister. We had a life in the theater together before either of us were on this.
Right.
So she and I were doing, we met first on a thing called But I'm a Cheerleader, which is a brilliant musical, someday will come to Broadway. And she was like, Tom, she goes, I've got this friend you should take your resume to. You'd be really good at his new place. His name is Sasha. I'm like, cool. And it was Sasha Petraske. He was working at the Lambs Club at one time. And I came in with an envelope with my resume.
Lambs Club is on Broadway. Right?
Yeah.
And
Bulgarian, right?
Yeah.
knowing what I know now, he didn't take resumes. He only took recommendations. So I'm sure he just threw that away. But he said, I don't have something right now, but I'm going to be opening something soon. And that was the John Dory Oyster Bar at the Ace Hotel. So I worked with Sasha there. Really it was life-changing. It was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's kind of what that training is like. Mm-hmm. Met Dan Greenbaum, and then went to the Beagle with him, and ran the Beagle for 3 years.
R.I.P. the Beagle. Love that place.
It was great. And
it's funny because I work at the John Dory, and one of the reasons I want to work there because of Sasha, and I think what year was you when you worked?
Opening for the first year.
Okay.
So we opened it in the first year. So we opened, in 2010, and then we opened the Beagle in 2011.
No, I got there like around 2015.
What month did the Beagle open? Do you remember the month?
It was summerish, and
because Amor opened in March.
I think it was like
2011. That's when Amor y Amargo.
I want to say May, maybe.
Yeah, so 2 months later.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Wow. And now they mention
and that was it.
Wow. No, but now they mention those places are
Yep.
iconic.
Yep, and the Beagle happened, and then the Beagle lived for 3 years, and then Megan Dorman wanted me to help her open the Dear Irving. It got postponed, so in that meantime, I was subbing at Attaboy and Milk and Honey, and enough to work all the time. And Julie Reiner opened the Bar 54 on the top of Hyatt Times Square and hired me to be her opening head bartender. So I did that for, might have been 2 months, and hotel, nope.
That's it.
And then we opened Dear Irving, and then I worked there for 3 years. Cut off my thumb.
At Dear Irving?
I was making muddlers as gifts for my team.
Oh.
In your house, because I hear that
house.
story.
Yeah,
That
and
it was in Speakeasy.
was freehanding on a table saw. I popped it out of my hand, and I touched the blade, and I went,
Oh my God.
that's going to be bad. And was looking at the back of my thumbnail from this side. I'm like, fuck. Anyway, so I stopped bartending for a little while, but Megan Angel, who is like another sister to me, had me managing or dooring all of her other properties. So it was the 2 Rains Law Rooms, Dear Irving, and then we had the Bennett. So I was working nonstop, and then I got back to work. Was missing about an inch on this hand. I could still, do things, but I would drop a little bit every once in a while. I'm like, damn. It was just uncomfortable, and that's when a friend of mine was working for a distributor, and he said, hey, Tom, we need somebody who's really educated on spirits, very well connected, and could manage a spirits portfolio. And I'm like, sure, I'd be interested. So I took over the spirits portfolio management job for David Bowler Wine and Spirits, did that for 2.5 years, and then moved to another small company that is very similar to what I do now. We have had a spirits portfolio called the Craft Spirits Cooperative. They're based out of California. They are the people who own Capurro Pisco and the distiller of Capurro Pisco, and I had that in my portfolio. And when I left Bowler, she was like, we're going to come with you wherever you go. I'm like, cool. And they called me back 2 days later and just said, hey, we'd like to open an office in New York if you do it. So I'm like, okay. So I was their office in New York. All of my product, I got to New York on March 10th, 2020.
Oof.
Yep.
5 days prior to the end.
But hey, I helped them expand their footprint by 4 times during the pandemic. And then I work for Gallo now in the same type of thing, but at a much bigger scope. And they poached me from this other company. And so I work for Gallo now doing spirits.
Do you enjoy doing that stuff, or you miss bartending?
I miss bartending for the first 4 hours. And that's true. I mean, that's where that came from. That's where that came from. It's like, so I've done a pop-up at a bar recently that we called it the first 4 hours with Tom Richter, because I'll work from 5 to 9. Yeah. No problem.
And then
I'll do something else.
sit at the bar.
No, that's
enjoy some drink.
Or I'll go home. I don't, whatever.
So that's like, probably 5 minutes. You're like, I don't know, 20 more than, it's your experience, but it's so impressive because obviously we're going to have more questions, but.
You can edit some of that out of there too, man.
No.
No, you want to know it all. That's so cool because working, moving from Minnesota and going on these trips, performing and getting gigs and jobs, and then moving to New York. The experience coming to New York is very different from what I've heard from other folks and myself as well, because it's very different. The pace of life in other states is a lot slower. The drive is very strong as well, but it's so different because compared to New York, it's fast paced. People's moving. You have a lot of options on every corner, bars, restaurants, cafes, anything you really want or feel like having that day. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cocktail, but like food-wise, there's so many options. And moving to New York, that's the thing, right? Like if you get a job at a restaurant or a bar, it could be also a different kind of restaurant. You're mentioning different kind of bar when you start. and then building your way up is eventually, you know. It's so different from my perspective as well, you know.
And what about you? Like you said, you're coming from Florida and then working
Well,
here.
I mean, Florida is such a distant memory. You know, I hated it there, and so I left there literally 4 days after I graduated high school. I've never been back to my hometown, not once. I hated it. But you know, my career behind the bar started in New York in earnest. But because I had such a career as a chef, you know, teaching at a culinary school, being on the Good Eats program on the Food Network, you know, all my work in the back of the house in all these places, I was drawn to restaurant bartending. So that first place I stood behind the bar for 3 years, that was the Atlantic Grill. But then I worked for John Fraser at Dovetail. You know, we got a 3-star rating from Frank Bruni in the first 3 months we were open.
Which was around 2008, right?
Yeah.
Because I worked at 81.
Yeah.
And Dovetail, when they opened, it was like the competition.
Yeah.
Like fine dining.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
She's got a good memory.
I work a lot of places
So I worked,
also.
me too. I worked at Dovetail, then I worked for Gray Kuntz at Cafe Gray and Gray's. And then I also, like, inadvertently, frankly, was doing what Tom was talking about. I also worked at, like, some, you know, pretty lower tier, divey kind of bars, some that don't even exist anymore. I pulled some shifts at Bushwick Country Club. I pulled some shifts at Dram. Not that was a lower one, but like
Dram was awesome.
Dram was rad.
Yeah.
You know, the occasional shift over at Extra Fancy or whatever. Then I got a job at a restaurant called Rye, which was owned by...
Oh, that was great. The one that in Brooklyn?
Huh?
Oh, I love that place.
I remember
that
that
bar
place.
was amazing, right?
Yeah, that was great.
22 feet of solid mahogany built in the late 1800s by the Brunswick Company.
You guys were
wow.
using my tonic for a while there.
We were, yeah. I was an early adopter of new tonics.
Awesome.
Yeah, you would come in and hound me there.
I should have known you better.
That's how we got to know each other. Well, I think also my perspective as a former chef, or whatever, I guess you're always a chef or whatever, but you know, you even said it to me. I can remember early days, you'd be like, well, your customer base is going to have questions about why it's brown. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't give a shit. I can explain to them it's brown because that's how it should be. What you're used to your whole life is what it shouldn't be.
Right.
Right? Like, we can see that this is more sort of like how it's naturally made. And then, you know, a few different weird things happened, and Amor y Amargo became a reality in 2011, same time as the Beagle, right, in March of 2011.
Yeah. And how did this idea came together? Was it only you?
No. So there was 4 of us in the early days. It was Avery and Janet Glasser, who were the owners of Bitterman's Bitters, a guy named Meyer Sabaro, who's a lawyer and a cocktail nerd, and myself, and it was a pop-up. You know, the space, if you've been, it's 240 square feet. It's tiny.
Yeah, we've been.
Yeah. And it was the dry storage of the bar and restaurant that's out front. It just happened to have its own entry.
Which was like a Latin place, right?
It was called El Cobre way back in the beginning. Yeah. It's been El Cobre, then it became Gin Palace, then it became, forgetting one. Mother of Pearl.
Mother of Pearl.
Right.
I remember that,
Then,
yeah.
Of course, the Amor y Amargo moved in there for a while, and now it's Soda Club. But so, you know, there was this tiny little room that had their dry storage, and we were there for, I can't remember exactly what, but we saw the basement. The basement was huge. And we're like, well, why don't you guys put all your flour and rice and everything down that basement, and we'll pay you for this room every month. But for 6 months. We said we'd do it for 6 months as a pop-up. And after 6 months, they said, hey, it went really well. You want to go another 3 months? And we said, okay, sure. And then after 9 months, they said, do you want to go another 3 months? And we said, all right. But then, like, Avery and Janet had to leave because they started making potables, and you can't make a potable and own a bar. Meyer was like, I got to go back to being a lawyer, so now I'm hiring new people. And then at the year mark, like, now partner, Robbie, he said, all right, it's been a year. Do you want to go another 3 months? And I was like, look, man, you understand this is a pop-up. I have a full-time job. I'm the head bartender at Rye, you know, meaning I haven't had a day off in a year. On my nights off, I'm here.
Okay.
And I said, if we're going to do this, we need to go full into it and do it, or it's over and I'm going back to my job. And he said, quit your job.
It sounds like a breakup.
Well, he said,
No way.
yeah, it was
totally.
like, get on, you know, it's like, let's commit or not commit.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a partner, it's better to say it right in there before you take the next step, especially if you commit into the next 3 years. You already committed to a year.
Right.
And then the next 3 years is going to be a hard one, because not because of the time of the place or the people. It's just because they're making the decision, and I'm sure getting permits and getting everything that you need to get it requires more time. Of you already put in 7 days,
Yeah.
a week there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we learned a valuable lesson there, though. And, my company now is called Overthrow Hospitality. We have several locations, all in the East Village. We're opening one in Colorado soon. But the lesson that we learned is if you have the means and wherewithal, and I think this is now kind of common knowledge, but like it was not common in 2011 to say, try your concept out, but don't commit to any timeline. Yeah. Be a pop-up. And if it succeeds, stick with it. Yeah. And it wasn't a pop-up. But if it doesn't succeed, you already have the space, flip it into something else, and that's a pop-up. So, for instance, you just asked what was out front. It was El Cobre, and I listed what's been there. But then upstairs, which we also have control over, was, when I started there, it was Cienfuegos. Then it was Honey. Then it was Honeybees. Then it was Café de l'Enfer, and now it's Avant Garden. Amor y Amargo itself, because of the pandemic, became Amor, Spritz by Amor, Loja by Amor. So the building itself, in the 15 years we've been there, has had 13 different concepts.
Wow.
Right. With Amor being there almost the entire time.
Yep.
But I think like unplanned, obviously, but moving into a thing and being nimble and being flexible is powerfully important to long-term success.
Yeah.
So when was the time that you were like knowing each other?
It came very shortly after the Beagle.
Well, like I said, I think that we knew each other from
We knew
Rye.
each other from Rye.
Like
and then,
tangentially, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is this dude who has the Tonic.
Yeah.
And then I think it was the Beagle where I was
the
oh, that's
Beagle.
the Tonic dude. He's now over here at the Beagle in my neighborhood because
Yep.
the Beagle was just a few blocks from Amor y Amargo.
And we were starting to establish, those two bars, all of a sudden, it was that time when we were at the best bars in the best city to be in those bars at that best time. That was that little window that was just amazing. And we knew everybody in the cocktail bars because there were maybe 10.
Yeah. But I would also say, like, it was pretty cool that the Beagle had this real focus on sherry and fortified wines. And Amor, of course, is very focused on amaro. And we were just a couple blocks away.
Yep.
So it's unique to say, like, oh, there's another cool place that opened up that's focused.
Yeah.
I've never been excited really to go to bars that are too broad stroke. Like, I wouldn't go to a restaurant. It's like going to a diner. I can get waffles or eggs.
They have like a book of
I can get a steak,
Yeah.
baked clams. I can get matzo ball soup, but none of them are going to be that great.
Yeah.
But if they were like, we just do matzo ball soup and eggs, I'd be like, man, let's go check this out, right? So I think that there was a little simpatico there.
And the timing was crazy because like 2012, 2013 was nutty years. I happened to win a sherry cocktail competition. Steve Olson took me to Jerez. I went to visit 14 bodegas in a week, and it was great. Steve and I are still friends. That same year, or the year before that, actually, I won the Bowls Geneva cocktail thing, so I was in Europe doing that. And that summer, we were both American finalists for Diageo World Class.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that's
And that was the first world class in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like, and I think from that, we knew each other a little bit, but then going through that sitch really kind of hooked us together, and we've been pretty tight friends ever since then.
Which is, for me, that's the best thing in the hospitality industry, the bar world. Because I always said, like, if you're a bar back, probably you are doing, you're just learning and you're doing something else. You just go and work and go home. Servers the same. It's like, we're too tired, or we're just going to have something to eat and let's go home. But bartenders, they don't do that. They usually go and it's like, let's have a beer to decompress, and then you start having these conversations after, also complaining about the shift, which is the best thing ever, because it's like venting and it's like the best thing.
That download.
Yeah, the download, yeah.
But then you become friends with someone, and it's kind of hard in New York City to have a friend, because obviously everybody's busy, the schedules are always like different, and even dating is also horrible,
difficult,
And I think bartenders, even to this day, for me, is very interesting that you work your whole shift, you want to hang out a little bit, and then your day off also, sometimes you go and do R&D, and let's try this different.
Oh yeah, the advice that I've given to younger bartenders, and like, I was asked and I didn't do it. I'll do it next time they ask me. But that thing they do, letters to a young bartender, or letters to your young self, or whatever it entails. I was too busy, so I couldn't do it. But like the advice that I do give to younger bartenders is when I was starting out in New York at the Atlantic Grill and whatever other places I worked, and I was a day bartender at the Atlantic Grill, so I had all my nights free. But I would, on my 2 nights a week off, I would go to 3 different bars on each of those nights. I wouldn't stay long. I would have 1 drink, maybe an appetizer or whatever, so I could have a little bit of snacks throughout the evening. But I would shake hands with the bartender, say my name, say where I worked. And, you know, over the course of a year now, I've got hundreds of names. Maybe they've handed me the cards. Like, it was the most, like, really rewarding way to network. And get my name and face in front of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, established myself by doing that as a young, I wasn't young, but like as a young bartender.
Yeah.
That was my, you know, which is, you know, I'm on record in other places as saying things like, you know, there's no other business like ours where I could be like, oh, you know, I'm, you know, whatever, even like mechanics. I don't know. I'm watching you on YouTube do something mechanical that I don't know how to do, and then I can just jump into your DMs and be like, hey, I got a mechanic shop too. Can you tell me how you did that? And you're like, figure it out yourself, man. This is my business.
Yeah.
Right. But meanwhile, in the bar world, like I see someone in Imbibe magazine who lives in Portland, Oregon, and they're doing this cool thing. And I'm like, hey man, how'd you do that? And they're like, oh, I did it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so like we're very willing to share. We're
Yep.
open source. You know, we're not really gatekeepers of information. We're, you know, we understand that the high tide raises all boats, and you can't copyright recipes anyway, so you may as well give them away to establish provenance.
Yep.
So like, I think that propelled me. And again, coming into this career late as a second career, I needed to have something to sort of accelerate my acceptance into the fold.
Yeah.
And just a quick question. So, you know, like usually also there's like this stereotype of like, this is not a career. Like you guys did it like, you're like technically like a profession, like being a chef or like actor from college. How do you feel now that it's like, it is a career?
Well, it is, and you know, I think that especially people who have been in theater going into the restaurant world are very reluctant and very like, oh, I'm not going to quit doing what I'm doing, kind of thing. But you have much more control. Like theater is difficult. I do miss it, but not enough to really want to do that again. It's when you approach it, like I remember it was in 2005 when I think I just went, no, this is what I'm going to do. And I turned down some acting jobs, and my wife was like, really? I'm like, yeah. And it was kind of the best choice. You know, it's like I think at that time too, there were a lot more educational events. We went to all of them.
There really were, yeah.
We went to every single one. And
Always.
I feel like we're missing that right now. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like I'm promoting my brand of me, the bartender. Nope. It was, you're a bartender. You know, we're here for you, not for me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's changed a little bit, I think. You know, I'm not really sure I'm happy about where it's changed to. I mean, Jim Meehan is a good friend, and I will always credit him with this quote that I use all the time. Mixologists serve drinks, bartenders serve people.
Yeah.
I'm a bartender.
Wait.
So mixology is about me. Nope. Bartending is about you. So that was always my approach. And Sasha was very much that person as well too. So
yeah, I think also, you know, to your question of like, is it a career? You know, again, my dad owned a bar when I was a kid. Granted, he got rid of it by the time I was maybe 15. But hospitality employs, it's the largest employment sector in the United States and has been kind of forever. You know, just because we're not all linked together. You know, I always say as like bartenders, you know, we used to send boomerangs to one another. I call that the inter-office memo. Like we're all working for the same big corporation. We're just at different branch offices. You know, so like. You know, and again, I was a chef. It wasn't that big a leap. Is a chef a real career? I mean, yeah. So why isn't bartending? Yeah. Right? It's the same building. It's the same output. It's the same bottom line and P&L. Like, why is one? You know, and also I would say over and over when I train people at my bars and restaurants, when I've visited other bars and restaurants, or when I give advice to younger bartenders or even older bartenders, I say to them, how many times in any given week? Because I know it happens at least once a week. How many times in a week as a bartender does someone sitting at your bar ask you if you're the owner?
yeah.
How many
always.
times does that happen to the service staff?
Yep.
0.
Yep.
You are already in a point of prestige. You're in a point of trust. You're in a point of like, a sort of honor, right? Like the bartender, nothing beats the bartender.
But when you're there, you do own the place. I mean, that's how I approach it. It's like, this is my place. So yeah, of course you're going to ask me if I'm the owner. I'm like, well, tonight I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, you own the bar. Yeah.
So I'm running the bar, making sure everybody gets the same attention.
Yeah.
Even if it's at a table, and even if it's not sitting in front of your bar, the attention by means as a bartender is making the same cocktail for that person when they hit the table. You can probably be on the second floor, but the same cocktail for a person sitting right in front of you and to the person that is sitting on the second floor without even connecting. What were you about to say?
No, I was gonna go back to the same question. Like, so when you mentioned like you took like every educational part of the business, right? But there is something, I think for me now that I see like a lot of events, parties, pop-ups and everything, it's about, going there, knowing the brand. Sometimes they have master classes, as they call it now. But what was the part that you were like taking that you don't see here anymore?
I think
Yeah.
there's a moment where I was the president of the USBG, United States Bartenders Guild chapter of New York City, the largest chapter there is or was or whatever. And when I took it over, so we have monthly meeting, at least one monthly meeting. We had over 600 members at the time, but the monthly meeting would usually garner around 150, 120 people would show up because scheduling and everything else. But still, that's a huge number of people show up. And so brands wanted to get to be a part of it, and they were a part of it, and that's great. They helped fund the USBG. But I immediately took on the role of saying like, okay, if you're going to bring your brand in here or whatever, let's say Lisa Laird is going to come in and do a talk about Laird's Apple Brandy. I would say you've got 45 minutes to talk to us. You can talk about Laird's for 15 minutes. I need 30 minutes about apple brandy, about fruit brandy. I need you to educate these people and then sell your product. This isn't a 45-minute commercial for you. So I tried to like bend that. And then like what you're saying, USBG was a huge part of my life for a while. It hasn't disbanded by any means, but it's sort of fallen off its mantle. But brands pop up and do educational events. But I think now it's more about doing a party than an educational.
Yeah.
I think when we were coming up, any one of these parties that you see now had a moment at the top of it or in the middle where they would stop and talk about like what we're doing here. Then we'd have our little party or what have you.
It was like usually like a 3:00 start, and you'd get the education, and then that would morph into a happy hour. I mean, it's like I remember the Tank 10 release. I remember every single Del Maguey thing that I went to because I became obsessed with mezcal. I remember every sherry.
Like Misty would come down all the time from Boston and talk to us about Del Maguey. Yeah.
And
or even as you mentioned,
everything.
Steve Olson was always there.
Steve Olson and the aquavit thing with Linea Aquavit, and it's like, oh my God, I'm learning all this stuff, and that just becomes part of your bag of tricks. And eventually, have you done Bar 5 Day?
Oh God, no.
So
I would. I honestly would. It's just too damn expensive.
it is.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be able to do that in 2010, and that was probably one of the best educational situations I've ever had in my life. And
That's the one thing I
was
always
great.
try to do. I was trying last year, actually.
We tried to do it like, I think like 2 years ago, but it was canceled.
Bit of a high barrier for entry for me and for a lot of people. Obviously, you can get sponsorship for it or what have you. But I also have been involved for years because I taught for 2 years at a culinary school. So I went to culinary school a long time ago, and then more recently, even though it's also a long time ago, I was an instructor at a culinary school. That was kind of the end of my cooking career. It's the last job I had before I moved to New York. So I've always had, and again, during my career, I was the research and technical chef. Like I'm sitting around with a bunch of books and researching. Like I think at least I'm a pretty good teacher. So I've taught for years on and off at things like bar methods. I've done seminars at Tales of the Cocktail. I think there's a little bit lower barrier of entry there for both of those. Now maybe that's changing with Tales, but and then for years I taught at Portland Cocktail Week, which is free. You get yourself there, and they put you up. They cover your hotel and all your food, and then all the seminars are free. Wow. So I've never been like a gatekeeper. I don't want to hold back information. I want it to be as free flowing as possible, but at the same time, it needs to be quality, right? So like there's some manipulation that has to be done there. But yeah, I think it's a watchword for me to never gatekeep information from my teams or from anyone, frankly. And in fact, there was a time out front of Mother of Pearl where we would do my own kind of version of the USBG monthly meeting, where I would invite, of course, all my bartenders from all my spots, but then I would reach out to all the local bars as well and say, come and join us for this. So we would have, again, brands come in and talk about their category and then talk about their product.
I think that's important. I mean, as a bartender, as a seasoned bartender, I think that's important because you don't only want to get, like you say, a commercial of what can I buy, how can I promote it, how can I sell it. What I want to know more is about what are the variations or the process, why did this came about, like the whole story about the spirit itself, not about all the brands. Because I think that's one of the things that we want, like we know as bartenders, we know brands and we know a little bit of the spiel. But honestly, I think it's easier for us to connect with the customer and with the guest when you talk a little bit about the story, Like you tell them a little bit why is it potato vodka, what is it grape vodka, what is it rye vodka, like semolina, I don't know, whatever kind of grain that they use for vodkas. But I think that's very important. And if you don't know...
He's talking about vodka with me.
Yeah, I know.
I can guide you though. You were like very
You too, man. You don't even have it at Amor, right?
No, but
Between us, we have 4 bars that we've worked at that don't carry it.
Yeah,
but that's all right. It's good for cleaning a mirror or if you cut yourself.
Vodka is water with consequences.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, right? Like we all want to know like more about it. Like you have to really not be nerdy about it, but you just have to like have 15 minutes, 45 minutes a day to learn this. Like it doesn't matter if you like tequila, vodka, whiskey, scotch, anything really. Like just learn a little bit of the process, and I think it's easy for you to understand the other brand, the side of the brand. Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, 100%.
And when if somebody comes into your bar and you're the one that they're going to ask the questions to. Mm-hmm. So you need to know stuff.
Oh,
yeah. You have to.
I don't want to look foolish in front of my guests.
No.
Mm-hmm. So, like for instance, when we get anything new at Amor y Amargo that we haven't seen, I get 4 bottles, and then I put it under the bar, not on the back bar. No guest can see it, and there's a notebook under there. And we, as a team, because we don't work together, there's only one of us 5 nights a week and 2 of us on the weekends, right? As a team, we sip through the bottles and we write our notes down. And at first, we start just tasting it. Then we say, okay, now I'll put it on ice. Now I'll add seltzer water. Now I'll think about what I might mix this with, right? Because the sort of undertone is I can't make chicken soup if I've never eaten chicken. Mm-hmm. So we're going to eat this chicken first and talk about what we think it would go with. And then I'll order more and we'll put a bottle on the back bar. Because you understand, even though that tiny little bar has hundreds of bottles on it, the minute I put a new bottle up, the first guy who walks in goes, what's that? And if I don't have an answer, what's that and how do I drink it and what do I have it with? If I don't have an answer, I look foolish. And so in an effort to distance myself from that anxiety, we go through this process, right?
Very smart.
And that's the best process ever. Okay.
It's okay. So talking about back in the day, there's something that you don't see anymore in New York City, in bars?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Ashtrays.
Ashtrays.
I remember that's a good one. Yeah, I've seen that one.
I can't wait to sit down at a bar and have a bartender actually make a drink in front of me instead of pouring out of a pre-batch. I miss that, and I think versions of that will circle back into the normal vernacular, I hope.
What about you, Sother?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Besides the ashtrays.
I don't miss them. I'm just saying, you said, what don't you see anymore? I remember sitting in, Doc Holliday's, smoking cigarettes in there late at night all the time.
Yeah, man.
What do I not see in the bars that I wish I did? Engagement. I impress upon my teams that we have to be intimate and engaging because my bar is so tiny. So like if you're not, it's like standing in an elevator with someone without saying anything to them. It's weird.
You know what? That's a good analogy.
So you got to be really, in my bar, you got to engage with people or it's awkward. What I've noticed, mostly post-pandemic, is that we have a lot of younger people behind the bar because a lot of like older dudes like Tom. A lot of older dudes have left bartending. You're in the field, but you're not behind the bar anymore. Like we've suddenly got a shortfall of mentors and leaders. But what we do have, of course, then is tons of information that's available online at the ready, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, etc. So we have all these people who are a little bit younger, so they're not super accustomed to being engaging yet. The gift of gab is something you have to cultivate, and if you're too young, you haven't cultivated it yet. But they have the technical information, so you can say, "I'll have a last word," and they will make you a pretty technically proficient last word. But then they sit it down and they ignore you. Mm-hmm. They look back at their phone. They're also not in tune with making sure the lighting is the right heat for what time of day or evening it is, making sure the music is the right beats per minute or volume for how many people are in the room, just making you feel comfortable, seen, heard, and welcome. I think that everything's a pendulum. I think we've swung widely outside of that, and now the guest is demanding it again, so it's coming back. But I think that's what's been a missing category for me for a while. It's like intimacy with the guest.
You know what? Now that I mentioned that, I think I want to add to this. I had a conversation with a guest one day, and she said that one reason, like, I hear that a lot of people is not drinking, they're not going to bar, this and that. And that's one of the reasons, because when they go to a bar and they sit at a bar, they have a drink, and then the bartender turns around, ignores them per se, or he is distracted. You don't really have to have a long conversation with the guest, because you can't really have that because you have to attend other people. But at least when somebody's sitting right in front of you, have a small conversation. Hey, or whatever. Break the ice. Exactly, something.
Sure.
Or I don't know, the weather, right?
Yeah. I like your pants. Those are cool.
Yeah.
Like engage with them, become intimate with them in some quick way. And then frankly, I think another lost, and I don't want to be old man shakes fist at sky here, but another thing that's lost is the ability to, I am busy. I do have to kind of ignore you. Mm-hmm. But have you met Tom? Yeah. You guys are drinking the same whiskey. You probably enjoy each other's conversation. Yeah. You guys chat. Yeah. And you are a connector.
Exactly.
I can't tell you over my time behind the bar, and I'm sure yours as well, I know for a fact I have introduced people who are now married with children. I absolutely know that. That's a no-brainer. I also know that I have been the guy who was the connector for multi-million-dollar deals. Yeah. Right? I also know I've made people become very good friends. I also know that I personally have many of my best friends in life are people who sat at my bar. Mm-hmm. Right, so there's a way to connect people to yourself or to the people around them. You're walking the length of the bar. We call it the lion in the cage, right? We're just pacing, right? You're walking the length of the bar, and you might pick up on a conversation that Tom's having on one end of the bar and go to the other end, and Nuri's having a conversation. You're like, man, they're not sitting next to each other. These guys got to know each other. These guys need to know each other. So I might say, hey, let me carry your wine down here. I'm gonna set you next to Tom, the open seat. I think you guys have something you're gonna discuss. Yeah. And you just connect people. And I think that is, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it is, and that's why I think it's missing. But where did I get it? I got it from the guy who taught me. Yeah. I don't think there's that guy teaching people right now. The mentor is a vacuum right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I was reading is which was very impressive for me, that the Z generation, right, the Gen Z, is the face that they put when someone says something, they don't have any response, because they don't feel like they want or they owe you a response for anything. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's also kind of like losing that community or society as humans, that we're social, right? And this thing with the pandemic and the Instagram thing, and everybody's in their own bubble. Working in this industry for me is coming with the idea of you're going to be part of the community. And when I see, bartenders or servers or whoever is on the phone, for me, it's not just disrespectful, but also it's dude, you have to be present, because if something happened, you're on your phone and you don't know what is going on. And at the end of the day, it's something that I learned is if you have an emergency, you can give the restaurant phone number to your family, and they can call because it's an emergency. Other than that, your family or friends or whoever, they should know you're working, and they shouldn't text you at all. And sometimes this kind of conversation feels you're very uptight or strong and everything. But for me, it has to have ethic work to be part of something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big part of me that wants to agree with you, but there's also a small part of me that understands that I hate that we're all cogs in this capitalist machine that we didn't choose to be, and we have to be. And I totally understand when the clerk at the checkout at my grocery store doesn't want to say hello to me. I don't care. She doesn't care. She has to poke buttons and take my money. That's her job. Nowhere in her job description does it say she has to care for me. But in our field, there's a wider berth of that, right? Mm-hmm. It is kind of in your job description. It is the job, right? We serve, again, you just said it great, like we serve people, not drinks. But I empathize with the worker.
Of course.
You know, if they just want to set the drink down and go back to scrolling, hey, listen, who am I? But at the same time, that's not what I want. It's not what I want at my place.
Yeah.
It's what I try and impress upon my team, like engage with people. But I do it in another way. I try and show them. I don't need to convince them. I need to show them that the more engaged you are with your guest, the more money you make.
Yeah.
And again, if we're going to be trapped in this capitalist machine, let's exercise it. You know, let's put it through its paces.
Take advantage.
Yeah,
But
and on that though, it's like when the first thing out of Sasha's mouth when he was training us, the very first thing was that your first job is you're the protector of the room, period.
Yeah.
And you're protecting people from each other, but from themselves as well.
Oh man, bartender protect me from myself is a mantra of mine.
Yeah. So it's like, and that is also what engages exactly what Sother was saying, is like when you're behind the bar and you're doing the lion in the cage pace. When I go to bars even now, you forget that you're only 2 feet away from the bartender. So every conversation you have, they can hear. Second thing he said is discretion is your most important thing. So it's like you don't repeat anything you hear unless you're connecting people.
Hear all,
and you don't
say
even
nothing.
you don't repeat anything. You connect people.
Yeah.
And we always had this thing, you know, it was Tinder Tuesdays at Dear Irving, and we were there to save people from bad people too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, you know, as you were saying, how many people you've connected. There's been a lot of people that I've been help escape as well.
Same.
You know, so it gets really complicated, and like Sother was saying, there's nobody instilling that or training that anymore. I mean, there are.
Sure.
You know, Sother's here, and you know, like I have people that I go to their bars all the time, and they ask me questions, but it's not like I'm doing it for them to watch me do it. You know, so it's and the level of engagement, which is also involved in it. It's like when I'd be training bartenders, I would say, so what's the first thing you ask somebody when they sit down? What booze do you want in your drink? Or what's your favorite liquor? Or what's your favorite flavor? I'm like, no, none of those are right. So you first ask how their day was.
Yeah.
And then what flavors they hate. And then are you allergic to anything? Nothing beyond that. You know, and if you make them a drink that they hate, you know exactly the right drink to make the next time.
Yeah.
And that was 100% accurate. I mean, like, no, well, sometimes they wouldn't like it, but the next drink nailed it. But it was all about engagement. And, you know, we do use our phones back there. And part of the complicated thing of I'm kind of for having your phone back there is that in those days, during that chunk of time, if somebody was at Amor and they came to my bar and they say, hey, can you make this drink from Amor? I have this database that this young man named Josh Perez put together, that he gathered all of the cocktails from all of the bars at the time and put it in one database.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an extended form of good hospitality. So you go to Amor a lot, and you come to my bar. If I can make that drink, I can make that drink. If it's some complicated syrup or some clarified whatever, I can't. And then go to that bar and enjoy it there. But if I can make a drink for you that is your favorite drink over at the Nomad, and I have the stuff, I'll make it for you.
Good.
You know, so
Right. I mean, early days for me behind the bar, and I'm sure for you as well. You know, I had, you know, Mr. Boston guy.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. I'm turning around and looking up the Alamoguzulum.
exactly.
Breaking out my phone and looking
Yes, like,
it up
oh,
today,
I know that.
right?
Can I do that one?
When I was,
I can make that.
When I was behind the bar, when I was in the kitchen, I used to carry around, you may remember these, Jane Goodall was famous for she carried a notebook that was bright yellow in case she lost it in the grasses with the apes. It was easy to spot, but it was called Write in the Rain, and they were waterproof. And that's what we used in kitchens because our hands were wet when we were, you know, or whatever, or greasy. So I used those behind the bar for years. So I'd have my notebooks and I'd be like, oh, let me look that up real fast. Like, it's the same. It's just another tool.
Yep. faster.
So that's what I started using when I started also bartending. I started putting things on books. I just paste it with glue and
Oh yeah,
cut
like
in.
moleskins. You
Exactly.
just paste in stuff. Yeah.
Didn't the Writer's Rain guys came out with a moleskin side one? I remember there was a waterproof.
Oh, they had several.
Yeah, a little. I had one of those for years.
Mine that I had in the kitchen and then subsequently behind the bar, it had a holster. So it was always on my,
cool.
it was always on my hip with a
wow.
little pin pocket. And the pin that I used, of course, was the space pin because you can write underwater. So like if my hands were dripping wet, I could still write stuff down.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just got off on a weird.
No, it's a good word.
tangent. Weird memory tangent about my.
But that's good
writing
because
notebooks.
those are the tools that you use, you know, like that
Yeah.
you had access to also.
So I guess what I'm saying is like I don't take it away from people physically or otherwise. I don't detract from them for having this tool to use. Sadly, you know, the photos that we always see of like, well, look at this photo from, you know, the 1930s and everybody's reading the newspaper. They're all disengaged. I'm like, yeah, the newspaper's pretty finite. If everybody's sitting there looking at their smartphone, they could be looking at literally any of the human condition. You know, they're not just reading the same paper. There's, you know, like you can only scroll to the end of the newspaper and then it's over. You can you can never scroll to the end of the internet.
Yeah.
So I get that there's obvious difference, but I it's just another tool. It has to be there. Don't, you know, be egregious about it.
For me, it's like,
best
you
you
know,
can.
that at the end of the day, obviously, we turn in different eras. Like now we have the access of having fun on your hand. Like when I moved to New York in 2004, I didn't have like internet available on,
Right.
on the train, for example, right? But I think also, you know, adapting to certain things to use it in your advantage is good. But when it distracts you from things that are supposed to be there, that's when it comes from, like, you know, not having a good bartender, paying
Right.
attention to things. And the other part is like, you know, I feel like with this era of Instagram that everybody's like so anxious of like what they call it FOMO, like fear of
yeah.
missing something.
I have JOMO,
Yeah.
joy of missing out.
Yeah. You're home with your cat.
Damn right.
Enjoying some whiskey and grilled steak.
Yep.
But I feel also that, you know, there are consequences with the pandemic that many people left the industry. They have to hire whoever was available or wanted to work. And we have young generations of like, they don't even know how to bar back because they just were like the server that they jump into the bar and learning stuff, which is good. You know, in terms of like you have a job.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, having now access to the internet and everything and having, you know, tutors like you guys, there's also part of like going somewhere and not just go with the same 5 bars all the time and saying like, which is your favorite bar? And they mention the same 5 bars and then they forget about the other ones.
Yeah. You know, it's like, it's one of those things too that
Shiny, look over here.
Yeah, look, yeah, and what you said earlier about the pandemic. Yes, all of New York went home. The ones that weren't from New York, like super talented bar folk. Someone gets to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They find a building that they can buy for the cost of 1 month's rent in New York.
Yeah.
So they buy that building and they open a bar there. And now they own the bar, so they know that the bar will always be there. Instead of 10 years from now, when your lease is up, you're out.
Yeah.
And we had a big brain drain. And I think it's great because now everywhere has really good little cocktail bars. Which another thing is you've got to be careful what you wish for. Because when I was in the cocktail scene, 15 years ago, and, you know, people say, well, what do you hope happens? I was like, well, I would like to have kind of a really casual place with wooden tables, great draft system, and be able to get a good drink with maybe a big chunk of ice. We're there.
Yeah.
And
We've won.
every bar is now a cocktail bar, which should be, but now the cocktail bars are forced to do something even more special, quote, so that you
Progressive,
come to
yeah.
them. Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of this stuff is really cool, and I'm really fascinated by it. Like you're using, you know, they're making koji and they're doing mirin that's flavored with different kinds of misos, and you're clarifying things, and all of those things are fascinating. I'm a little thinking it's a little too much right now. Let's go back to some.
Yeah.
Just cook the meat properly.
I'm in there
like
with
they
you.
used to say on Top Chef.
Right.
Just cook it properly, and then the other stuff should
We'll fall in line, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the same camp as you. But I always think it's just everything's a pendulum. The pendulum has swung in this direction pretty far. Bars have become sort of de facto drinking restaurants.
Yep.
Where every drink is proprietary to the house. Whereas I think our sort of time there was a couple of proprietary drinks, but almost all the other drinks could probably be made kind of anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? There's this sort of like base level of the drinks, and then there's a couple of stars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, entire menus are those quote unquote stars, which, I don't know. Again, it's pro and a con. I don't hate it. I think everything belongs. I've said this to you before. Like for the listener, a very famous restaurant here in New York is called Le Bernardin. It's probably one of the most known seafood restaurants in the world.
Great.
So I say to you, Tom, let's talk about this tomorrow over fish, right? At lunch, we can go to McDonald's or Le Bernardin. They both serve fish. Yep. But what's your expectation of this lunch? Right? So like, what's your expectation of going out to a bar these days has changed. And you got shows like Drink Masters that are really skewing maybe the middle of the country's view of what a cocktail bar is. Those aren't that's not a cocktail. That's literally a show. That's a production. That's and that can't be done at scale. That can't be done in a bar that's moving through volume. That and probably frankly can't be done at a bar that isn't moving through volume. They can maybe produce 4 of those drinks throughout the entire evening. So like. I understand that there's a bit of fear there from our side to not go so far that we can't come back. But I also don't think that low-end bars are not going anywhere. They're always going to exist.
Mm-hmm. No, and the point about the shows, I think you're right, because if somebody cannot make 20 of those cocktails with like the nitrogen and the flour and whatever, all the ingredients that they have, think about cost as well. Because one of those cocktails is going to be $100 and above, probably, because of the entire show and the process and the timing. But for some of those, it's hard to duplicate in cocktail bars that actually have 2-3 floors.
Yeah.
So if you go to a nightclub, basically you can't get that.
Right.
People tend to get bottles. People tend to get bottles and use. Like I've seen that because I worked at a nightclub a long time ago.
I think the problem for me, from the consumer's point of view, is consumers have always had this strange dichotomous split in their minds about what a bar or a restaurant is. Mm-hmm. They go to a restaurant, they know like, this is a burger place, I'm getting a burger. They're not trying to order sushi at the burger place. But they go to a bar, they think a bar is a bar is a bar. And at the last bar I got this, can I get this at this bar? Right? Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe through some better education from our time behind the bars and from having bars that are focused, you can start to teach people like, oh, I'm at Amor y Amargo, I can't get a daiquiri here. That they don't do that. They don't have juice, they don't have sugar, they don't shake drinks. Like, we're way out of bounds here. But you can look around and see what's going on, and we'll order that because this is where we are, right? I think that like it's a real hard, I don't want to say hardship, but it's a very difficult mind frame because for some reason I've noticed that it's getting less and less. But for years and years, people, you'd know your regulars and you'd be like, oh, here comes Tom. He's drinking whiskey on the rocks. Mm-hmm. Here comes Dory. She's going to have a mojito. And like, what people, before they sit down, you've passion fruit. But when you've got it sitting down in front of their seat before they've gotten seated, right? And they feel good about that because you feel they've seen and all that. But also then that implies that you drink that, whether it's 10 degrees or 110 degrees, whether it's your birthday, your anniversary, the day your kid was born, the day your dog died, that's what you drink all the time. Who does that with food?
Yeah.
Nobody. And so suddenly we've finally gotten past that, I think. Now people do drink with a great variety.
Yep.
But now we're showing them you can also drink with great variety and great technique and production value and prep. And it's just unsustainable on the grand scale, I think.
And I think that
unless your entire program is that. Let's look at Schmuck or Bar Contra or even when I used to work at Booker and Dax. Like, if the entire program is that, then you're a specialty bar, right? But we can't. I think that it's hard for the consumer to be like, oh, I was just at Bar Contra and I had a house forced carbonated chartreuse drink. Can you make me that? No.
Yeah, and also it's part of this is that this is part of the bonus of living in New York or curse or whatever. It's like
a blessing and a curse.
You can. There are so many bars that you can be specialized, and somebody comes into Amor and says, "Could I have a vodka?" So it's like, we don't have vodka, so you can literally go down the street and have that, but let me turn you on to something that I can do for you.
Right.
So it also more conversation.
Sure.
You know, some people
More,
aren't
more
going to like
conversation,
that.
more education,
But
and some
that's
people
okay.
don't. Yeah.
And you've got to be like, it's okay. Somebody else will come in if you leave.
yeah.
And it's not a snotty thing to say. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And that's where you can get away with that in New York a little bit better than, say, you could in Lincoln, Nebraska, which would you wouldn't be able to afford that conversation.
Right. You don't have as much, you're not in such a target-rich environment. I always joke, like, you could literally open up a bar in New York that serves actual rusty nails.
Only.
Not the drink.
Yep.
Actual nails with rust on them. And you'd survive long enough to at least get a few months out of it. Because there's enough people that would be curious and they would come in and they would try your actual rusty nail.
And people will make it a trend. It'll be viral.
It'll be on Instagram, you'll blow up, you get a
Exactly.
million followers, whatever.
Yeah.
It may not last forever, but we're in such a target-rich environment. We can get away with being hyper-specific, super focused, crazy obsessive. There's, look at Amor. It's all Amaro all the time. Look at the cabinet, which is just all agave all the time. There's spots you can go and just get granular.
But then it's like I want that. Like, so I
can zoom
want,
out,
I want, to go to Amor tonight, and then maybe we'll go to this other. It creates a great environment. It creates a progression for the evening. It's like you start somewhere and you go to here and you end somewhere else because of how they specialize.
Oh, sure. And I think that's the other thing too, right? Like when we do pop-ups all over the country, I realize, holy cow, people are only going to have 2 drinks because they have to drive.
Oh yeah,
right.
Not like New York.
Or I also realize, this person's sitting down and they've got here at 5 when we opened and they're still here. It's 8 o'clock. That's not what happens in New York. People come in for a couple and they move on to the bar next door. But there is no bar next door in Lincoln, Nebraska. Right? You pick the bar that you're going to tonight and you're there all night.
Yeah.
I say in New York, people go out to dinner and they have dinner at a place. But when they go out for drinks, they go to multiple places.
Yep.
Right?
Bar hop.
Yeah, crawl.
Yeah. You sometimes go for a cocktail or 2 cocktails at a place. I think us as bartenders are people who work actually in the service industry. We tend to go to different bars, different places. But the folk who's not into, going to cocktails or not into restaurants, or the people who just go and have their birthday, their celebration, the wedding anniversary, perhaps their wedding day, that's when they go to our restaurant. And that's what our job is, make them feel good, welcome, make them feel special so they can come back.
Yeah.
And we can have that same repetition of folks. And I always say a friend is going to tell 20 friends that didn't like it. And if they liked it, they're going to tell 3 other friends. That's the rule, right? Like,
Maybe.
You always tell people the worst, and you always save the best for the only 3 people that you might know.
I don't think I've ever told a story about how smooth my flight was. But if I'm tarmacked for 4.5 hours, you're going to hear about it. You know what I mean?
Right.